Dr. Sinan Ciddi, a senior fellow on Turkey from the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Now, to begin, break down this crisis in Libya and what has caused it.
Yeah, so this is a long ongoing saga between not just Turkey and Egypt, but Turkey has had a very contentious relationship, almost unique relationship with Libya, dating back for years now to the early 2010s. When it basically essentially recognized the official government of Libya at the time after conflict broke out in the post-Gaddafi space, basically because Turkey was interested in getting a partner that would recognize or work with Turkey to sort of establish maritime zones and its view of how the Mediterranean should look. Not because it was interested in Libya simply because it was a potential ally, but Turkey was essentially looking for somebody who could validate its claims in the Mediterranean as well as energy resources. This contrasted very starkly with Egypt's conception of who essentially should be backed in Egypt in the Libyan space. And given that Turkey and Egypt had fallen out due to Erdogan labeling Sisi administration as a dictatorship that was reminiscent of that came about as a result of a coup. This really, you had two big behemoth governments, both Turkey and Egypt, potentially squabbling over what to do with Libya or what Libya would do to serve their interests. And as you correctly suggest, right now, if that had continued, if the Turkish and Egyptian governments had not, worked to patch their differences, so to speak, then their mutually opposing differences could have resulted in a wider conflict because of the two different sides they were backing in Libya breaking out into the forefront. So what we now have essentially is this sort of two minds meeting, Erdogan and Sisi working together possibly out of necessity to avoid a wider conflict in Libya that could spill over into North Africa, obviously, and nobody wants that.
Do Egypt and Turkey actually have a chance of solving the Libyan crisis at this point?
That is a good question, and at this point, we don't know. But I think what is interesting right now is, I think watchers, as well as the Libyan sort of authorities and officials who've so far remained anonymous in terms of who their identities are, saying that there's a greater chance now to avoid a wider scale Libyan conflict, now that Turkey and Egypt are at least beginning to work together, hopefully, to avoid that sort of calamitous sort of outcome. I don't necessarily know how much that will, to what extent they can agree on and how useful the fruit of their labors will be. But it's probably better than these two leaders not doing it, not talking at all. And this could have happened years ago. The fact that Erdogan essentially chose to label the Sisi government as a dictatorship, calling him a murderer, etc., and that he would never essentially talk to him, has not helped Turkey's cause basically since 2012, right? And he's had numerous opportunities to back down from this, but he's finally come around on the Erdogan side, at least, to think that, nobody's interest is being served, least of all his. So at least this conversation starting is a positive development.
Right. Obviously, Israel's looking from the side at this kind of bargaining relationship between Egypt and Turkey. And the question is what that means for the state of Israel. Should we see ties flourish between both of these nations, Egypt, which obviously has a peace treaty with Israel, but, relations are at an all-point high tension, you could say, at this point. And obviously, Turkey and Israel have terrible relations at this point.
So, yeah, again, this is a difficult one. I mean, Turkey's position is obviously very clear. I mean, Turkey has used every opportunity to use the war in Gaza or Israel's position to sort of fight Hamas as a means to undermine and weaken Israel on the world stage. I mean, it's the only country inside of NATO and the only aspiring member of the European Union membership, right, that does not only not classify Hamas as a terrorist organization, but essentially works to enable it. I mean, Hamas exists, alive and well inside of Turkey and has active government support, whereas Egypt, as you say, is in a sort of difficult position from their perspective, simply because, yes, they have an existing sort of treaty with Israel, but as you also rightly say, that Sisi seems to be sort of hedging, or we're not quite necessarily sure how he will continue to work with Israel going forward. My estimation right now is as Erdogan probably seeks to see if he can weaken Egypt's resolve and sort of pull it away from its existing sort of treaty with Israel, and to see if it can sort of sabotage that. I'm not sure if Erdogan has any sort of sway over the Sisi administration, but simply because the Egyptian government does not trust Erdogan as far as it can throw it. So that may be Erdogan's weakest link, in the sense that Sisi may be willing to work with Erdogan.
Right.
For wider North African issues, but as far as its position towards Israel is concerned, I think Erdogan has basically no sway or pull over the Egyptian government.
All right. Well, I'd like to thank you so much for joining us. Very interesting to hear your insight.